What I'd like to do is talk to you today about patient registries, much similar to what Sharon has just given a great introduction for, and about how registries can be used by patients and clinical investigators to facilitate a lot of this development we're discussing over the last couple of days for rare disease communities. So first, let's start by making sure we're all kind of on the same page with regard to patient registries and the roles that they can fulfill. Here I'm speaking about registries that are broadly open, designed for and accessible to patients, registries that promote communication, education, and disease understanding. And there are various uses of registries and roles for registries. Certainly they've been used in the past to paint a portrait for the patient community and of the medical providers that support that community. They can be used to communicate education and care initiatives to patients and providers and improve things like diagnostics. But what's very relevant to the last 2 days of meeting is how registries can be used to connect those seeking volunteers, those seeking patients, with the interested families and patients themselves in an efficient manner by pre-screening interested parties. So to share one example, yesterday the Friedreich Ataxia Research Alliance was mentioned, and their registry was involved some time ago in a phase 3 study to recruit 70 patients. They were able to facilitate the recruitment, fulfilling all of the recruitment at one trial site and having a wait list within 2 weeks. And that's a great example for how registries can be designed as collaborative efforts and save both cost, time, and valuable patient resources in a recruitment and trial process. So why now? And we've heard a lot of reasons for this already. As we've all witnessed, there's been a growing interest in rare disease therapeutic development over the recent years. There have been a number of advances in treatment, in diagnostics, and gains in understanding disease history. Common diseases are increasingly being recognized for their genetic underpinnings and can be subdivided, in some cases, into subsets that resemble rare diseases. Foundations themselves have really led the way by taking the initiative to guide research through organizing patients and calling attention to their numbers. Increasingly, foundations have been funding studies and funding structures like registries to accelerate discovery. Patients and families themselves have been clamoring for information. They're highly motivated and highly willing to participate. Communication technologies, as we'll hear about later, have made it much easier and faster to communicate with each other and to reach each other in this day and age. So all roles and trends aside, and we saw some similar numbers and have heard some similar numbers, we're still confronted with numbers and the fact that there may be 7,000 rare diseases, and if a registry were to be developed for every disease, that's the number we're looking at. But let's compound that a little bit more, because there's certainly a trend for each country to develop their own rare disease registry. Doing the math on that, it really provides a model that's just not sustainable for the rare disease community. Too many registries would be needed to continue in that suit. So looking at the examples here, for the 500 or so registries that are listed on Orphanet, there are 50 Duchenne muscular dystrophy registries, 50 in the same disease. And we know that the same disease registries or even related disease registries can collect similar or can collect very different information. So taking a step back, we can probably instead consider the idea that rare disease groups have very similar information needs and similar interests. And we can design a solution for a rare disease system, a system that's more efficient in linking families, foundations, and researchers. So the Office of Rare Disease Research at the NIH is leading the way in this project. The ORDR has teamed up with Patient Crossroads, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and Medscape to launch the Global Rare Disease Patient Registry and Data Repository Program. So the GRDR program itself at the core will develop a repository of rare disease patient registry data. There will be, as part of this program, there will be 12 registries developed for patient organizations who are not yet represented by registries. There will also be 12 existing registries and databases involved in the initial partnership. Together, these 24 entities will test the repository infrastructure itself. So what we'll collect, again, as we heard from Sharon, will be a set of common data elements, and this will utilize the rare disease common data elements already published by ORDR, and we'll add to it as well. And collecting a set of shared and standardized data will be what enables research to be conducted both within a disease or across similar diseases, but doing so across registries, taking a different twist on how this has been done before. Information contributed will be de-identified, and each patient in the system will be given a unique patient ID. So another aim will be to evaluate the feasibility of incorporating electronic health records into the system. Here, we'll be using the EPIC accounts from our partner at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Another goal of the GRDR program will be to develop a template and replicable model for patient registries using the existing registry infrastructure. We'll also provide guidance for organizations who want to establish their own registry outside of the GRDR system. Registries that participate in the GRDR program will seek to incorporate participation internationally and collaboration internationally. And because this is a 2-year program, public and private partnerships will be sought to expand the scope of the registries and sustain the resource after 2 years. So let's have a quick look at what this model looks like and how it will address the needs of various stakeholders in the rare disease community. Let me see if I have a pointer here. I guess here. Okay, so registries implemented through the GRDR program will start with patient entry modules. Here we go. These represent the individual registries themselves. Patients join the overall program through disease registries. The disease registries are managed and can have links to the registry through coordinators, also known as curators. There are some various steps that these groups can take. The coordinators would act as the liaison between the registry itself and the patient, helping to answer questions or communicate information. In addition, a curator may be the same person. A curator can help review the information that's been entered by patients, since this is a patient-entered model. From there, the core set of common data elements will be de-identified and transferred over to the repository. But the registries themselves can actually collect more information than that. It's just the subset of shared elements that will be transferred. And at the point of the repository is where registries and other databases can also participate. So they can match the core data elements and contribute their de-identified data, their de-identified patient data, to the repository. Researchers, clinicians, company representatives can search the de-identified registry data at that point, and it can allow them to create pools of pre-screened participants. Now, any contact with the patient communities is done back through the registries, so that communication to patients always comes from their registry coordinator. Data that's collected in the repository can facilitate many other learnings as well, and we've seen this through some of our registries to date. For example, it can be used to evaluate care standards or to propose new care standards. It can also be used for comparative effectiveness tools. And because of the unique ID that we're developing for every patient that participates in the program, we can develop linkages that would unite specimens stored in partnering biorepositories with the patient registry data. So that would be in the case for patients who are participating in a partnering biorepository and who are also partnering in the registry. We can provide a link between the two. Here we go. So among the key features of the GRDR registries, the center point is for patients to directly opt into the registry using a web-based portal. In addition to opting into the registry, they can opt into various communications that they would wish to receive. The accounts are all password protected, and patients can enter their data and explore the data that's been collected or submitted by others in the registry. As well, they can explore other educational materials that are featured through the registry. So the infrastructure being used for these registries supports the offering in multiple languages. For example, here you see the Cystinosis International Registry, and they're a great example of how offering the registry in multiple languages has enabled them to become more of a global system that connects both their patients and their care providers across borders. Now, for countries that want to participate and collect country-specific data, because obviously care is different among different countries, they can add, the system has the capability to add country-specific modules to collect additional information just beyond what is the shared and core data set. So that capability is certainly possible. Now, patient participation is centered around kind of the core survey. We also sometimes call that their profile. This core survey is kind of the medical or health survey and is proposed by the registry team and their medical advisors. Can include things like the diagnosis, their current health or current treatment, and certainly the demographics. So again, the common data elements come into play here, being spread both across the medical survey, of which you see an example, as well as the registration elements. Now, patients can always access their account because it's web-based, so they can update the information as their medical care needs change. And the information is also requested at least annually. So even if they don't have changes, we ask them to verify their information on an annual basis. It's collected in a longitudinal way so we can look at trends. And if registries like, they can collect diagnostic reports as well. It's supported by this structure. So the patient view of kind of what their profile looks like is shown here. And this is what we refer to as their dashboard. This is a nice system because it allows information to be provided back to patients in a way that's tailored based on their responses. For instance, let's see, in the upper right section, if a patient perhaps answers their medical survey in a way that has them match clinical trial inclusion or exclusion criteria, they could see the listing of a relevant trial on their dashboard. Or another example would be regarding regular health care. If a patient is missing a particular recommended surveillance or diagnostic step, they might see quick tips show up at the bottom that allows them to communicate and ask those questions to their healthcare provider. So in addition to this type of dashboard, the patient, of course, can see all of the de-identified registry information that their counterparts have contributed, just as the researchers can. So from the data that's collected, various type of analyses can be performed. There we go. Examples can include patient counts or demographic counts, and those have been used for things like sites, trial planning, or feasibility assessments. We can look at measurement trends evaluated over time, or clinical or functional assessments of disease progression, and those can be graphed over time as well. All of these are just quick examples that can offer the chance to better characterize the patient community as a whole. Now, the coordinators for the registry have the ability to export all of the data out so they can do their own analysis or reporting, either back to the community or for research partners. In addition, they can also, if they so choose, give the exported data to researchers. Again, this would all be done in a de-identified manner. There we go. So by designing a shared registry model, benefits can be realized by many different stakeholders in rare disease communities. Certainly foundations can benefit. They organize patients and improve their visibility to researchers and regulators. Foundations can facilitate patient involvements in trials and improve the organization's efforts to accelerate research in their disease. Companies can access a single source for patient data or to communicate with patients. As mentioned earlier as well, any individual or proprietary surveys can be added on here. We can call those like survey modules. They can be added on in supplement to the core patient medical survey that has been developed. Researchers have the ability to access broad pools of patients and communicate in either a targeted or in a general way. And by that I mean messages can be sent either across the entire registry community or it can be targeted to just the individuals that meet their particular characteristics. Researchers can learn directly from patients and families. Another benefit for regulators is really the improved understanding of the scale of the disease, the community itself, and access to how patients perceive their outcomes or burden of disease. This certainly gives the option of a more sustainable model, freeing funding of multiple disease registries that overlap and allowing that funding to go elsewhere. So what I'd like to do in closing is share with you information about how to participate in the GRDR program. For groups with registries or databases, there will be an application period shortly announced. You'll be able to contribute information then for the selected 12 participants, or certainly groups can participate after the 12 are selected. For registries or databases that are already dormant, data can be transferred over to GRDR so that it's not lost. Now, for patient groups in particular without registries, we would encourage them to apply. There will be a set of selection criteria for both groups with registries and groups without registries. The criteria will include the ability to communicate with patients, how well can they reach patients directly, the amount of support available during the registry program. So that could be an example of, do they have a registry coordinator that could be used? Do they have a scientific or medical advisory board? Another selection criteria will be the readiness of the group. Examples of that may be, do they have a consent process already in place? If not, do they need to develop one? We do have standard materials that we're developing to assist groups as they develop a consent process. Another example of readiness may be a medical survey. Is there a health survey already in effect for the disease group? Or is one planned for development? If so, how will that include the core data elements? Collaboration would be a final area that's looked at during the selection process. Does this group include various stakeholders across the disease? That could be other foundations, researchers, companies, various stakeholders. Now, industry partners separately are sought to develop further public-private partnerships, making this model more sustainable, again, after the 2 years that I referenced earlier. Companies interested in partnering can increase the scope of diseases represented in the registry and in the repository, and increase the speed of deployment of registries. By partnering, companies can really lead the way of adoption of the GRDR program as a resource for patient research, similar to what we heard earlier. What I'd like to do in closing is share with you the contact information as well. Yafa Rubenstein is the point of contact for the GRDR program, and anyone interested in partnering further beyond the GRDR program is invited to contact Kyle Brown. His address is shown as well. Thank you very much.